Hello, welcome to my new video series. My name's Craig Linton, Craig Linton Health Mentor on Instagram. This video series is entitled Health Mentor Moments, and our first video is a moment with Michael Behan. So Michael Behan is the founder of Jack Club. Mike has ran many groups within rehabs and community settings, pointing people towards their innate well-being. Mike currently communicates with most of his followers through Facebook and runs a weekly Zoom meeting every Saturday morning. Hello, Mike.
Hello, Craig.
Was you nodding off there?
Sorry?
Was you nodding off there?
No. I'm getting to that age now. I fall asleep. I do quite often. Good to speak with you anyway, mate.
Yeah, it's been a long time. I'm really pleased to have you kicking the video series off.
Okay, that's an honour.
So Jack is based on three core ideas, right? These core ideas are what help to point. I don't know if ideas is the right word. I'm limited by language at the minute, but these ideas help to point people towards their inner health and inner well-being. Could you just tell us a little bit about what the three core premises of Jack are?
Okay. Well, how they came about, really, I haven't had a drink like for 15 years and a couple of years in AA, and it's been a journey of finding out why I ended up the way I ended up. So I went out searching. It's been a spiritual journey. And I could say, like, it was about 11, 12 years ago that I read The Power of Now, and I came across a sentence in that which was, we are not our thoughts, we're the observer of our thoughts. And that just really hit me powerfully, you know, to realise I wasn't my thoughts, I was having thoughts, you know. And I thought, wow, you know, so there was that. And then I came across something called the 3 principles of mind, consciousness and thought, which is superb if anybody gets a chance. You know, have a look at it. But I did find, and like with all this, what I was getting, this like spiritual download, you know, I went off into a church hall and I tried to explain it to a few people. A local charity got hold of me and said, come and do it here. So I went to do it there. And I started with a flip chart, and it was just what was going through my head at the time.
Yeah.
And like mind, consciousness, thoughts, which, you know, I think even the people do have, you know, have a difficult time in explaining that. And they have like day courses, weekends and all this, but I get an hour or 2 hours to plant a seed in somebody's head. And somebody who's been in addiction, usually their heads are not, you know, in a good place. So I thought, well, you know, let me just go. And I sort of like expanded, and then I got down, I got too clever, you know, but it was just other people's ideas, how they made sense to me to get over my addiction. So I want to share it with you. And it got down then to like 3 things, is that, you know, my feelings are coming from what I'm thinking in this moment. Now, most people get that. It sounds pretty logical, but, you know, I've done hundreds of groups and I'll say to people, where are your feelings coming from? And I'll get all sorts of things. So there was that. So it was explaining that, and then getting people to realise that it's not life that's upsetting them. It's our thoughts about life, you know. So I talked about that. And then I worked back and I said, well, you know, also when you're having those thoughts, you can only have those thoughts in this moment now. In this moment now is the only true reality, you know, like I'm looking at you now, you're looking at me, it's the only true reality. And what I'm trying to say there is we can only experience anything in this moment now. But we have a tendency to go into the past or project into the future. And actually, when you do that, you're entering 2 illusory states, you know, they're not real, you know, in that moment. One's a memory, one's anticipation. So I used to go into groups and I'll say, it's like, and this did happen to me, it's like I was walking in the park and it was a beautiful summer's day and a young kid walking towards me with his head down and his hoodie up and his hands in his pocket, must have had some terrible problems on his mind. But I thought to myself, mate, you're in your memory or your imagination, but you're not in your mind. You're not in the now. You're not in, no, sorry. You're in your memory or your imagination, but you're not in the park. He wasn't in the park, you know. And this is what a lot of us are doing all the time. Instead of like being in the moment and sort of appreciating the moment, we're in either backwards or forwards. And then the third one was getting people to realize that, you know, these thoughts that we're having in the moment, that we're creating our feelings, we're not our thoughts, you know. We are having thoughts, you know, every human 50, 60, 70,000 thoughts. And suddenly when I woke up to, you know, I think, so there's me, I having the thoughts, you know, so, well, I can't be what I'm looking at, or I can't be what I'm listening to. So just those three things, I got an hour's presentation and I fattened it out with all sorts of examples and videos and everything. And I've took it round various charities and anybody who wants to listen, really. And it turned it into a PowerPoint from the flip chart, and it has made a difference. So that's where I am with it at the moment, Craig.
They're highly profound statements, Mike. And I think what we know these things, right? And we can speak about them in a very by the by kind of way. Oh, we're not our thoughts, we're the thinkers of our thoughts. The only moment is this moment now. Our thoughts create our feelings. These are three very profound concepts. I think it'll be worth just digging into them a little bit.
Okay.
It's life-changing stuff, realizing these three things.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. So in terms of our thoughts creating our feelings, there's the metaphor of the outside-in appearance of the world, i.e., this event or this person made me feel this way.
Yes.
When in reality, what's actually happening is, well, you tell us what's actually happening in reality.
Well, you know, it's like a typical example now. I could look out the window and it's snowing, and you're going skiing, and you go, "Oh, Mike, it's snowing." You know, great, I'm going skiing, and all I can think of is, "Oh God, you know, that means I'm trying to start the car and it's cold and it's damp." So what I'm pointing to is it's not the snow itself that's giving me my feeling, it's my thoughts about it. So what I'm pointing to, or all the spiritual masters were pointing to, is that life is just is, you know, and it's life is playing out. So it's our thoughts about it. And also we'll say, well, that person's upset me. Well, how come it's not upsetting everybody? So, you know, it's projection makes perception is whatever video I'm rolling in my mind, I will see out there. You know, this is like a flip round.
Yeah.
You know, I'm thinking that it's the world that's upsetting me, you know, but it's not. It's my thoughts about the world. And a lot of them thoughts are coming from like pattern thinking, conditioning, all this sort of stuff, you know. You know, I realized that I was, you know, carrying a lot of other people's thoughts around in my mind for years, you know, and it's like one day I got my bag of life, put it down, and all those thoughts that were everybody else's thoughts, I just chucked them out. And when I picked the bag up, it was a lot lighter. So how's that?
It's what's coming to me as you're saying that is, I'm thinking about how identified people are with their thinking, right? People are overly identified with their thinking, and people will defend patterns of thinking they have that aren't even helpful for them, because they see that as that's who I am and how I am, rather than something that's occurring or something that they're doing or something that they're engaged in that they have a choice over. So there's something about the value in creating space or an awareness of the space between the noticing self. There are many words for it: the conscious self, if you're spiritually inclined, you'd say the spiritual self, and our internal weather. And what you do is very valuable in that process. Well, more than I think. Well, yeah, I think it can't be anything else, but I think. But yeah. But you've certainly touched a lot of people with your work. You must be going into the hundreds of people you've worked with now.
Yeah, I mean, over the years, I've been in the present format. I've even gone into jail. I've gone into Winson Green prison and do this, and the feedback is incredible. You know, suddenly people are waking up to how they're creating their experience of life. It's not life, you know. It's their view on it, and I'll take it anywhere. I've took it into businesses and you know, because there could be two people doing the same job, both equally capable, and one's stressed and one's not stressed, but it can't be the job. You
Mm,
know, it's got to be your thoughts about the job. And
mm,
then I'll sort of work backwards. And it's like what you were saying there with people. It's like Eckhart Tolle says, you know, if we can get that little bit of disidentification that we're not our thoughts, that
mm,
little bit of a gap,
mm,
because when you believe you are who you are, you know, this is me and you'll fight it to the death, you know, which is all fine. But I mean, it's causing you a lot of unhappiness.
mm,
If you could just see your thoughts coming and going and notice, like you say, the awareness you give to some, you know, like if I have a horrible thought, I don't think, oh, I don't want to think that, I don't want to think that, because what you resist persists.
mm,
It's going to stay there. So what I do, it's like a little thing I do, which helps me is it's like I'm sitting on my settee and I've got the front door and the back door open, 50, 60, 70,000 thoughts. Now, it just so happens that if I hear a child crying, it triggers something in me. You know, something from childhood probably, or something like this. But I don't go, oh, I don't want to think that, I don't want to think that. So I invite that little 9, 10-year-old in and I'll let him sit on the settee next to me. And
mm,
I put my arm around him and ruffle his head and say, it's all right, son, you know, you're okay, you're with me now. If you can see it, it's a bit of child stuff. But it's if I do that and let the feeling stay with me as long as it wants, I noticed the feeling over the years has just sort of like moved on a
yeah.
lot quicker than me going, oh, I don't want to think that.
And that's that's
Does that
that's
make
a,
sense?
that's a very pertinent point, that the aim is not to resist the experience in the moment. The aim is to see the experience for what it is in the moment and allow it to run its course. And
Hey,
there is certainly a so what I'd say, there's a difference between pain and suffering. Life is painful. We experience pain in life. We have painful emotions, painful sensations, painful experiences. Um, when we replay them in our mind, they also come up as painful. The resistance to that experience creates suffering. We see it with
yes,
anxiety, right? Playing the tape forward, playing potential scenarios out in our mind, scenarios that seem frightening and unwanted to us. Looking for some kind of configuration where we can navigate it, where we'll be okay, but we're suffering those thoughts all along the way, not realizing that actually while I'm sitting on my sofa at home and I'm thinking about this stuff, none of this stuff is actually happening, and I'm robbing myself of peace in this moment, quite innocently, in fact. Um,
yeah,
so there's a correlation. People might be thinking, so what? Look, I'm not a drug addict. I'm not an alcoholic. Um, what does this have to do with me? Um, and for me, uh, the a person who becomes a drug addict, a person who becomes an alcoholic, is somebody who's reaching outside of themselves for something,
yeah,
um,
yeah,
to experience a sense of well-being in the short term,
yes,
and that is as a result of being a victim to their own thinking innocently. Because
yes,
we want to escape our mind, right? That's the whole point of having a drink or taking drugs, is so you can escape the state of mind that you're in. I think also that I was having this conversation yesterday, and I think within our society, we're very much taught to overly identify with our analytical mind, to stay in our intellect, um, and our creative mind, our experiential mind, our presence isn't something that's even spoken about or introduced to us during school or anything like that. So we're not aware. It's like we spend our life looking through these goggles of our thoughts the whole time. We're not aware that we can put them down, or at least move
change it.
them and get a little sense of what's happening in the
Yeah,
periphery. So I think it's very valuable to have these conversations with people such as yourselves that are working in this way with people, it's a very simple yet profound message. And you get those light bulb moments, don't you? I've been to many Jack clubs, right? You get that light bulb moment when people start to see, they start to get a glimpse outside of their habitual thinking, and all the questions that they had
Yes.
over here no longer even matter anymore over here, because their
Yes.
entire experience has changed in that moment, which leads on to the old adage that you're only ever one thought away from a completely new experience.
Exactly. Yeah, I think how I've approached it over the years, because I've had to be careful, because I'm not trying to minimize people's pasts or memories, or I'm not trying to do anything like that. So I soon realized in the early days it was best to tell it from a motivational story. You know, I am well, I feel well, I feel good. So how did I get there? So I'm going to tell you how I got there. I'm not saying you have to do this, so you know, but you can have a listen. You might hear something that helps you, but you won't hear anything that'll hurt you. You know, so see what I did. So all I'm doing all the time through the hour and a half, or whatever it is, or is giving examples, metaphors, similes, something like that. And there will be something. I can always more or less, not guarantee, but usually people will walk out, or they will hear something that they've never heard before. You know, and like one of the best books, you know, by Jack Pransky was called "Why Didn't Somebody Tell Us?" And he was pointing to that. If we'd have known this when we were younger, you know, this is why I do it, you know, is because, you know, I'm getting it on there. But if I'd have known this in my 20s, if I'd have known this as a child, really, the basics, like some of the girls I get in, you know, they had their children taken away and everything, you know, and I ever say, do you ever explain to your children where their feelings are coming from, that they're coming from what they're thinking? But, you know, to a child, that simple thing, instead of sort of being angry and all this, when they suddenly realize, well, I'm angry because I'm thinking something angry, it does open, it is an insight itself at a young age. So I think I approach it as just, you see, it's like insight. The whole thing is insight, seeing inside themselves. It's just providing the space where people might hear something that they will, you know, you've always looked at life like that, and then you go, oh yeah, you know, so that's the approach I do.
Insight, seeing inside yourself. It's funny that like, the words we use on a day-to-day basis, right? And we don't really sit back and have a look at, oh, what does that actually mean? What does that really mean?
Yes.
Most definitely with kids. Like I've had the conversation with my daughter from when she was younger, and she's found it helpful. It's something that when we say helpful, it's within our nature to label helpful as something that allows me not to feel something icky anymore, which isn't quite what it is, although it can have that effect. It can have that effect. It's more of an insight into how this is happening right now. In fact, that's all it is. This is how this is happening. This is how your experience is happening right now. And however that's showing up right now is however it's showing up right now. And for me, that piece is important as well, because people who are searching for an answer, people who are suffering in some way, suffering their thinking in some way, will tend to gravitate towards trying to use this awareness as a tool to bypass unwanted experiences. From my own experience, I can certainly say knowing these things hasn't stopped me having unwanted experiences, and it's something that I forget as well. This is why the staying in the conversation is good, keeping it within your awareness, talking about these things, sharing your experiences with other people, talking about the nature of thought, talking about the nature of consciousness, talking about the nature of our experience is good, because it keeps us in our awareness. And the illusion that the world is coming at us is so persistent that I myself forget a lot, right? And I suffer.
Yeah, and me.
Yeah, I've got.
I get caught up in it.
Yeah, well, it's what we're here for, isn't it? It's the game, isn't it?
Yeah,
It's built to look that way. That's the fun of it. We get to experience all this stuff that we wouldn't experience if we were zen all the time, and everything everything slid off us like water off a duck's back.
yeah, yeah.
The life is very
And
much. Carry on.
yeah, go on.
No, carry on.
No, I was just going to say what I've noticed, common denominator through hundreds of groups or whatever is people don't love themselves. They don't love if I can go into a group and if they've got the courage, I'll say, how many people here like themselves? And it's not a very good response. And some people would look at me with abject horror, like myself. There's so much that they feel they're unworthy.
Yeah.
Like I go into a group and I'll give them homework and I'll say, right, next week I want you to get up every morning. I want you to look in that mirror and go, and if you can't do it, say, I'm going to like you and work up to a like you, but I really want you to work up to a love you.
Brilliant.
And it's regaining their self-worth, you see, because we are beautiful human beings who've got lost in addiction. So it's pointing our way back to how you see, drink, drugs, eat, they're all symptoms. It's the causes. I think the causes. We fell out of love with ourselves. We're beautiful human beings, and we've just got lost.
Most definitely. And to add to that, I'd say that even for people who aren't experiencing addiction to substances, everybody's addicted to thought. People don't know how to disengage with their thinking.
Yeah.
And people suffer that. Everyone's addicted to thinking. It's just some people reach outside themselves for something. Everybody does that as well. Everybody reaches outside themselves for something. Some people like buying clothes. Some people like, the list is endless.
Yeah.
I think it's a very it becomes distilled down when you're talking about people with substance misuse problems, because it's very clear what the issue is. It's not so clear what how that issue developed.
Yeah.
There's something about
we're so
with myself. I was just saying there's something about our relationships with ourselves as well. And when you mentioned earlier about people not liking themselves, people not loving themselves, having to coach people to even say the words that they love themselves. It's funny because as you were saying it, I felt a little bit uncomfortable even thinking about saying that about myself.
Yeah.
It shows where we can be. At another time I'd be fine with it.
Yeah.
So our level of awareness is like this at all times.
Yeah.
But people don't know their true self and their worth. So they're over-identified with their thinking and the things they've done, which is a result of their thinking, right? We think, we do, we feel. They're all linked. So it's like, how can I love myself when I've done these things? How can I love myself when I haven't done these things? We don't meet these bars we set for ourselves. And I just find that really interesting as you were talking about.
Yeah. Well, it's like we've been conditioned. If I have this house, this car, this relationship, life will be great. And yet we know if one of them goes wrong, then we're back to unhappiness. What I learned, you see, in the early days, it was like I was getting these sort of insights about what I've been talking about. But one of the biggest insights, I think, was years later, was everything I'm looking for, I already have. And all the spiritual greats have told us that we have. It's like, we're going the wrong way. We need to go in. It's like when Jesus was asked, where's the kingdom of heaven? He says, it's inside you. When the Buddha was asked, how do I find peace? He said, look within. So what I'm pointing people to is, okay, your addiction and all this, but basically, you are okay. You're like Sid Banks used to say, you're sitting in the middle of a good, good mental health. And it's, so what I try and encourage people to sort of like, you know, whatever spiritual path you want to use, you know, there's lots out there, but, you know, but I just noticed in the end, they were all saying the same thing, you know, different spins or whatever, but they're saying the same thing. It's everything we're looking for, we already have. And it is so powerful when you wake up to your power.
Most definitely. And it is a message that's been conveyed for thousands of years in different ways. I think the barrier for some people would be that some people have resistance to spiritual language, religious language, spiritual iconography and things like this. So another word for what was the other word for the three principles? Something psychology. What was it?
The psychology of mind.
The psychology of mind.
Well, they called it various things in the early days.
Yeah. So by the three principles, I'm talking about, just for the viewers, I'm talking about the metaphors of mind, thought, and consciousness, which we touched on a little bit earlier.
Yes.
Yeah, I agree with you. It's as metaphors, trying to quantify them is very difficult. However, they point to what you've very skillfully distilled down into easy to understand language, right? Which is one of the brilliant things about Jat. It's you've turned something that's a bit that doesn't really have clear lines around it, and you've clearly defined within these three statements, and then go on to explore them afterwards, and give examples of it that people can understand, of how these things play out in your life. But yeah, as I was saying, some people don't have the spiritual leaning, and some people aren't like, I'm not a religious person by any means.
Nor am I.
Yeah, spiritual people aren't. And then some of us aren't spiritual, but it's not a requirement to understand how this works. And it's something that's testable for those who have a scientific mind. It's something that's testable. There are times when you've completely been pulled out of your thinking, and all of us have done it. I say have done it. All of us have experienced it. This came up in conversation the other day as well. Times of beauty. We've all been to somewhere that's been so beautiful it's took our breath away, right? And in that moment, our awareness gets plucked out of our habitual thinking, and we're completely present in that moment. If you're standing watching the sea and the sun bounce off the water, and you're feeling the breeze on your skin, it's through our senses that we bring ourselves to the moment. So,
well,
there are these moments where we experience that, right? And then we experience it. I'll just be very quick, Mike. We experience these things, and we're like, wow, and the outside in of it is, wow, that sea was beautiful. What the beauty that we experienced was being fully connected to the present moment. That was the beauty that we experienced. The catalyst for it was something that appeared to us to be breathtaking, right? Then what happens is we get back in the car and drive home and go, oh, that was lovely, weren't it? And then go back into our heads again. So the mechanisms of how this work are testable in a scientific way. We can experience these things, we can test these things, and we have experienced these things. And for those of us not spiritually inclined, or with issues around that language, that may be a barrier to somebody exploring the true nature of how we experience the world. I think it's a bit helpful to point that out also.
Yeah, I understand that. I think it's because with myself, and just a quick story, but I don't tell quick stories, people have said. But I was a year or so into not drinking, and I got up one morning with every intention of not drinking. And suddenly, from nowhere, bang, I'm going to have one. It just took over me. And addicts will tell you, it comes from nowhere, and I'm just going to do it out the way. I mean, my wife even went upstairs, you know, because she could see in my eyes and what was coming. But the amazing thing about this experience was the thought of having something I really wanted. I was ecstatic. Yet there wasn't a drink within half a mile of me, I should imagine. But then the next thought was the chaos that it's brought to my life. So I went into this sort of like, my only prop is a snow globe I shake, and my head and all the thoughts was going like this. And I did. I was sitting on the settee, and I just slid onto the floor, and I cried out to God, God help me. You know, it's probably Irish Catholic upbringing, God help me. Now, I don't know to this day what happened. Bang. But in that moment, I was just enveloped by a wonderful sense of peace. Now, Michael Neal has described it as, what did he call it? A psychotic break from reality. Somebody says you'd had a spiritual awakening, you know, but I think in that moment, well, which is a sort of contradiction to, I think I stopped thinking. I think my mind couldn't take anymore.
Yeah.
And it closed down, but in closing down, all there was peace.
Yeah.
How long it was like that, I don't know. But my wife said I came upstairs, held her hand, and said, "You know, everything's going to be okay now." And I walked out the house, and you know, I think she thought I was going to the pub. I didn't. I went just looking for a church, because that was the sort of catalyst for everything I'm doing now. Because from that day to this, I've been okay. You know, so it was a spiritual sort of awakening, but it's not religious. It's within all of us that, you know, I say to people, if we could just stop thinking for one minute, you know, which is impossible, I'm sure that all we'd experience is peace. And this is what I'm trying to get people, that everybody in a group or now who are watching this has that peace within them.
Which is the innate well-being thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
Well-being is our default setting. So Cherry, our mutual friend, uses the metaphor.
Yes.
The sun always, the sun shines on the inside always. And then we have
beautiful lady.
Indeed, and she will be my next guest.
Right.
Health Mental Moments. Yeah, the sun shines on the inside always, so we are in a state of well-being at all times. Our internal weather, our thoughts, are the clouds that pass over the sun, and the sun appears to disappear. It appears that the skies are grey. It appears that we have no well-being when the sun's shining behind that at all times. Yeah, we live in a society that depends upon us staying in our analytical mind at all times. Capitalism, advertisement depends on us feeling inadequate, and depends on us looking for something outside of ourselves to make ourselves feel worthy. Like there was at some point I realized I must have looked in the mirror one day. I was looking at my clothes, and I was looking at all these brand names on my clothes, and I thought they should be paying me to wear these. Like, I'm walking around advertising for them, and then I feel good because I've got a little bird on my top, like that was made in a sweatshop in China by a 12-year-old. I paid 90 quid for. You know, it's ridiculous, really. But we don't give ourselves the time to stop and take stock of things, I think. And these moments to do that are valuable. I have a similar experience of dropping out of thought also. Mine was I've told you this before, when I was sitting in the park, and I just noticed how beautiful everything was. It was a summer's day, and I noticed that my mind was labeling everything that I was looking. So I was looking at the kids playing. I was looking at the grass. I was looking at everything that you'd see in the park, basically. And I noticed that my mind was labeling these things as I was noticing them. And through my experience facilitating ACT groups in residential rehabs, also, a lot of that is around present moment awareness of the body, awareness of the mind, awareness of the world around us. I I had built up enough of a skill at the time that I could notice that I was doing this. So when I noticed that I was labeling everything, I just decided that I wasn't going to label things anymore in that moment while I was noticing. So I allowed myself to not label things anymore. When I stopped labeling everything that I was seeing, I no longer experienced them as separate events that were occurring. My awareness,
oneness.
So my awareness, because your mind's a labeling machine, right? There's so much content in this video so far. A lot of it could be broken down much more. I apologize for anybody if it's going over your head. But I trust there's something that you're hearing to get curious about. The mind is a labeling machine, right?
Yes.
It's how we navigate the world, and everything is opposites, and everything is, there's this, there's that, there's up, there's down, there's hot, there's cold. We know what things are because of their relation to the opposite of those things, the seemingly opposite of those things.
Duality.
The duality of life. Alan Watts says that the mind is the intellectual. I'm going to butcher this quote now, right? But the intellectual mind is like a knife, and it understands the world by cutting it into smaller and smaller and smaller pieces, and trying to understand reality, trying to stitch together reality with a knife is what we do when we use the intellect to understand our place in the world and life, etc. I knew I'd butcher it. Right? So I chose in that moment to no longer label things. I'm sure my mind was still labeling things. However, my awareness wasn't in that part of my mind. I was just in the park, right? I wasn't in the past or the future. I was in the park, Mike. So, and yeah, very similar to what you describe. I'm not sure how long that experience lasted for, because time wasn't really a thing then.
That's right. You wouldn't know.
Words fail me as I try to describe this thing that we don't really have words for, because we have words to label everything our analytical mind can describe. This is something that our noticing mind, our awareness, our consciousness experiences. We don't have words for it. However, I experienced it. And yeah, it left me a bit spaced out for about an hour after that. I walk around like a bit of a hippie after that. Go, yeah, dude, everything's
but well, it was a life-changing moment for me, because in that moment, I don't know what I experienced, but I was never the same from that day to this. I mean, I've been just okay, but I feel like I needed to share it. I felt a real need to, church halls in the middle of winter, and I've tried to get this. Well, it's not teaching; it's just an awareness. And I should have a boxer's nose, a number of doors slammed in my face, because people will say, "Well, what is it?" And I'll go, okay. And last time I said I don't know. They says, "Well, come back when you do." So I thought, well, I'll never be able to do that. All I do is it's literally like there's an energy field flowing through me.
Yeah.
And like now, the whole of this, it'll come out the way it comes out. And that's why people get, nonsense. God, I mean, God is love, and you've got the universe, you've got the source, you've got whatever it is, but we are connected to it. And I like the analogy of, like, if God is the sun and there's rays of the sun, everything that's in the sun is in the ray. So we are rays of the oneness, the oneness of the universe. You see, what it's the separation. We separate ourselves from each other by gender. Gender will happen, but we separate ourselves. You're this colour, that colour, and all this separation causes, you know, unhappiness, is especially when we're all one, you know. But trying to explain that, you know, you know, this sort of talking, if I went into a group, I used to do this at the beginning, but I just lost people. So it's really meeting people where they are, you know. So I'll get into a group and I'll get the feel of where people are, you know, and well, do you get this? Do you get this? And I've always saw Jack as a door opener. You know, it's not a teaching, or it's not anything. But basically, if you can get just a little bit of it, it might start you on that journey to the peaceful, happy human being that's inside you, and that's the approach, really.
It's an invitation to
good word.
Have a little peek behind the curtain of habitual thinking.
Yes. Yes.
Because the majority of what we think is repeated. It's past thoughts repeated again, isn't it? We have very little new thought that pops up.
Yeah. Well, I googled it. I think it was 98% of what we thought yesterday we'll think again today. You know, not a lot of new thought going on, you know. And well, I think something like 75% of it will be negative thinking.
Yeah. Well, our brains have to be skewed in a negative fashion for survival purposes. The people walking through the jungle looking at the pretty flowers got ate by saber-toothed tigers, right? And the people who were scared of everything ran and survived. So in terms of evolution, it makes sense that our mind is skewed in a negative fashion. For our well-being, it's not all being able to be aware of different levels of thinking and different levels of being is helpful. I'm going to show you something. When's the last time you saw this, Mike?
That was one of my earlier ones.
Yeah, I've got the prototype here. Shall we have a quick look through it? Do you want to have a little walk down memory lane? Yeah.
Yeah. Emotional. Emotional, you've got it.
I've got it, Mike. Look.
Oh, brilliant. I mean, that's literally what used to come out of our heads.
So the only reality is
brilliant. Thank you.
We're not our thoughts, we are the thinkers of our thoughts. Your thoughts create your feelings, innate well-being. It's developed a little bit since then. This is quite an old one.
Yeah.
Well, let's see. I haven't looked through this in ages. The only reality is now. You cannot suffer the past or the future because they do not exist. What we are experiencing is our memory or our imagination. You got the now in the middle.
Yeah.
And you've got what if land in the future, what was land in the past. And oh, I could do a little Jack now, couldn't I? Oh, you forgot I had this, didn't you?
That's really lovely. That's really lovely. I'd like to have a look at that sometime.
Yeah, it's certainly you've certainly developed it over the years. Let's not let all your secrets out. So
well, every like even the presentation I got now, I change something weekly. It's just something. I'm so privileged to be allowed into people's worlds, and they will say something, and sometimes I'm really amazed that that's how they perceive life.
Yeah,
and you know, because this is, we've all got separate realities, and it's an honor. So I think, oh, I could do something with what you've just said, you know. So that's great. But it's lovely to see that, Craig. Thank you.
So
that's beautiful.
Yeah, I've held on to that for such a long time. So in terms of, as you know, I'm doing the personal training now. It's my aim is to be able to support the whole person, the whole individual, physically, psychologically, etc. So the physical part of it was the piece that was missing. So I got qualified to be a personal trainer. Yada
Done
yada
well.
yada. I've been building that business up. My aim is to, as I say, support the whole person. Now, this is one of the reasons that I've started this video series, just to raise awareness around that element of my work. And I'll do that through giving platforms to people that I know who work in the same field. Excuse me. I'm not sure exactly what it will look like moving forward. One second. I'm not sure exactly what it will look like moving forward. There's been a global pandemic. There are people highly stressed at work. There are there are professionals, there are directors of companies responsible for the well-being of a number of staff members, who are dealing with a lot of stressed out employees at the moment. I think there's scope for work to take place there. There's a physical element of it. There's a psychological element of it. So we'll see what unfolds with that. We'll see what unfolds with that moving forward. I think for now, I'm going to keep these conversations up. As I say, Cherry will be the next guest on the show, I guess you could call it the next guest. Mike, how can people book you to for your presentation?
Well, they can email me, which is michael.behan, BEHAN, @hotmail.co.uk.
Okay.
I also have a Facebook page, which is Jack Club CIC. And if you go on Jack Club CIC, and on there, and we've started having, Sherry and myself, as having an hour every Saturday morning, just hopefully doing what we've just done, Craig, and absolutely anybody can zoom into that at the moment and see if it helps them.
So yeah, so maybe if the easiest way would be to find you on Facebook, and maybe message you through there. That'll probably be the easiest way to do that. Myself, I'm available through Instagram at craiglinton.healthmentor. I do one-to-one personal training work, online PT work also. I do well-being coaching, one-to-one conversations, just like Mike does. That's another string to Mike's bow. Well, Mike's that way. That's another string to Mike's bow. Let's not forget that Mike does that also. So if you'd like to have a conversation with either one of us, please feel free to contact us. That's fine. Keep your eyes peeled on the channel. There'll be more content coming soon. Anybody has any questions or anything we'd like to be touched on during conversations, please let me know. I've been Craig Linton, Health Mentor. This has been Mike Behan, the Jackman, and and that has been the first A Moments With. Thank you very much for joining us, and we'll see you soon. Thanks, Mike.
Thank you. Love to everyone.